Okay, this is Chapter 9, Lecture B. We'll finish up Chapter 9 today. We talked about the market economy and changing things yesterday, and after the War of 1812. Today we're going to focus on free individualism and the changing aspects of religion and some other things about the individual. Everything was on the move and constant motion during this period from 1815 all the way up to 1860. The West and freedom. John O'Sullivan termed it manifest destiny, America's God-given right to move west. Expansion west and use it would keep America from becoming like Europe and with a whole bunch of opportunities for owning land and stuff. But this came at the expense of the locals, mostly Native Americans and even slaves and such. One group that will emerge during this period is the Transcendentalist. Can I talk to you after I get this done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before or after the game, do you want to do something?
Before.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. But these Transcendentalists was a philosophy of a small group of mid-century New England writers and thinkers, including the famous Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller. They stressed personal and intellectual self-reliance, more of a scientific way to approach religion and basically depend on yourself more. Following own way instead of the crowd, they were kind of like free thinkers. You break from the crowd, do your own thing, beat to your own drum. Obviously, Waldo and Thoreau, if their writings, will stress some of this as well. However, the Transcendentalists were not a popular group necessarily, and they were a sect that was different than most religious groups at that time. You're going to have the Second Great Awakening will be a reaction to some of this, as well as some of the lifestyles of many in the area. Right of private judgment in spiritual matters and the philosophy of universal salvation through faith and good works. Moral free agent, that is, a person is free to choose between a chastine or Christian life and sin. Going along with the market revolution and appealing to the masses, and also controlled individualism. So basically, you're going to have more self-reliance again. So the Second Great Awakening is not necessarily a response, I would say, I guess, to the Transcendentalists, but it's more of this is how religion's going to view the Transcendentalist from a more broad perspective. And it's going to have some of the similar themes, but it's also going to stress faith and a personal relationship with God. The Awakenings and Impact, you're going to see the right of private judgment in spiritual matters and the possibility of universal salvation through faith and good works, moving away from the specific role of ministers. This was something that had been going on since even the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. And also the reality was pastors and preachers had a long distance to travel, and churches were often few between. In the I kind of reversed these ideas, but the stress, the celebration of personal self-improvement, self-reliance. Charles Granson Finney held month-long revivals during the Great Awakening. They stressed the human free will and vivid language of hell, like sinners and basically angry God, and all those who don't repent will go to hell. Rise of the denominations, Methodists will be big during this period. So even with the Second Great Awakening and its impact, you're going to see denominations rise, more specific religion, and such. However, there's going to be basically a lone wolf during this period that's going to emerge as a new, unique version of Christianity, and that is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or better known as Mormons. So you have the Transcendentalists, who are not necessarily religious aspect, but they are obviously stressing self-reliance. And then you have the Second Great Awakening, the rise of denominations like the Methodists and others. Then you have the emergence of the Mormons. And this can be founded by Joseph Smith, claimed that he was led by an angel to set golden plates with writings on it. He's going to publish them in the Book of Mormon. Book tells of three families who came from the ancient Middle East to the Americas. They were ancestors to the Indians, and that Jesus appeared to the Western groups after his death and resurrection in the New World. Jesus' second coming would be in America, with his prophet Joseph Smith lived. And even to this day, I think one of the places that they would believe this would happen is around Independence, Missouri. Mormons were run out of New York, Ohio, and Missouri. In fact, in Missouri, there will be an order for many generations to kill Mormons on spot. In Nuevo, Illinois, Smith was arrested and then murdered in jail by intruders. But his new religious sect had obviously some supporters, but a lot of people who did not like it. Made some upset by his doctrines, notably polygamy, having multiple wives, will be something that will dog the Mormon Church for many years until they ultimately did away with it. Brigham Young will take over for Joseph Smith and lead them more than 2,000 followers to the modern state of Utah, where they flourished and would be outside the United States for many, many years until they would be admitted to the Union. And thus, because they went off on their own outside the United States for a period, but they will be brought in as a state and a territory later on. Now, the limits of prosperity 1. Opportunity for the self-made man. Hard work paid off and did not matter in heredity, privilege, or government favoritism. You had the ability to make your future to some degree, obviously moving west. And not in the east, but really the west offered that opportunity. It was not easy. It was often hard and often resulted in early death. Race and opportunity. Blacks did not see the same opportunity. Free blacks were forced to rely on each other and constructed their own institutional life education churches. They were outside the mainstream of things developing. Downward mobility in society, couldn't get hired. Blacks, even if they were free, faced a lot of challenges because at this point in history, whites often associated blacks with slavery and slavery as subhuman, and thus, even though if they were free, they were still viewed as one and the same. Couldn't go west, though. Some states even banned them from coming or even moving. Transportation for blacks will be difficult to move west. It will be generations later until after slavery that most will move west. The code of domesticity, women's place in the home, not the workplace. Men could move between private and public spheres. Women could not. Women were expected to remain in the private sphere, not the public sphere. A spirit of obedience and submission, pliability of temper and humility and minds are required from her. This was a rapid birth rate, declined from 7 to 4 children as well. And this is where some people think women took an active role because obviously if they're going to stay at home, they'd rather have less kids to deal with. And you're also going to see women who do challenge this, who are going to be relegated to nothing at oftentimes. The point of this is this was a point in history where men were expected to be the provider, provide for the family, protect it, move it in and out of the public and private eye as needed. But women, you were always behind your husband. You were always expected to support him, whatever he did. Women in work, limits of prosperity 2. Women could compete freely for jobs, sign contracts, or could not compete freely for jobs, sign contracts, even sue. Poor women worked as domestic servants, factory workers, and seamstresses. Middle class provided themselves on women being able to stay at home and take care of the children. New neighborhoods were formed, family wage. Head of the household could command enough money to support his wife and children, and thus she didn't have to work. The big thing about what the women's role was, the domesticity, was to provide education to their children. Public education did not really exist at this point. It would not for several years. The point of this was they would use the family Bible. The woman would educate the children on the biblical stories and as well as teach them to read, write, and all the basic understandings of that they would need to get in life. Early labor movement, some feared the cessation of the personal economic growth gain in society would lead to bad ways. Wage gap grew greatly between the rich and the poor in this period. This will lead into the late 1800s, what we'll call the Gilded Age. Skilled craftsmen created the first workmen's parties, short-lived political organization, but it will set the stage for what will come after the Civil War. The liberty of living, the market revolution transformed and divided American society and its concepts of freedom. To many different groups, this looked different. And so basically what you're going to see is a transformation of an American society that will be focused on economic gains, economic opportunity, and it's really going to starts to change up and leading to the Civil War. During the Civil War, it will take a backstage and obviously be reduced to some degree, but post-Civil War years, you'll see that next step of change in the economic activities. Tomorrow in Chapter 10, we'll get into democracy in America. We'll talk about the changes and things that happened. We'll talk about the age of Jackson. We'll talk about basically the age of Jackson and how America changed greatly during his presidency, and that will be the focus for tomorrow. Have a great day.